Farms are often seen as peaceful havens, where time slows down and the noise of the world fades away. But sometimes, the silence hides something far more unsettling. What would you do if the very place meant to bring you peace became a stage for terror? Welcome to Eerie Road Tales, where we uncover the most chilling true stories from around the world. If you enjoy tales that send shivers down your spine, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications. Tonight, we delve into 3 horrifying tales of rural life, a place where isolation, shadows, and unanswered questions converge. Stay with us as we uncover what happened when ordinary farmhouse routines turned into unexplainable nightmares. Living on a ranch offers a kind of solitude that's hard to explain. The mornings were always peaceful, predictable, a cup of coffee in hand, the sound of goats bleating, and the vast, open sky overhead. It was the kind of quiet life many people dream about. But one spring morning, that peace was shattered by something I couldn't explain. As I stepped outside, the fresh mud from the overnight rain clung to my boots. I glanced toward the livestock pen, and that's when I saw them, footprints. They weren't from the animals, and they definitely weren't mine. Large, heavy, and deliberate, the prints circled the pen, like someone had been watching the goats. What was even stranger, the tracks led directly to my porch. Then, as if vanishing into thin air, they disappeared into the woods. At first, I told myself it had to be one of the farmhands. Maybe someone was checking on the animals late at night. But something about the pattern felt wrong. Why would anyone walk in circles around the pen and then stop at the porch? They didn't go to the barn, the fields, or anywhere else. It didn't make sense. I brushed it off, convincing myself it was a one-time thing, just someone passing through. But the next morning, the footprints were back, fresh, the same size, the same path, circling the pen, stopping at my porch, and disappearing into the woods. This wasn't random anymore. Someone was watching. As the week went on, I started checking every morning, and like clockwork, the tracks would be there. By now, it wasn't just unsettling, it was terrifying. By Friday, I'd had enough. I decided to stay up and keep watch. That night, I set myself up in the barn with my shotgun and a thermos of coffee. The barn overlooked the livestock pen, and from there, I could see most of the property. The hours crawled by. The only sounds were the occasional rustle of leaves in the wind and the soft shifting of the animals. Just after midnight, I heard it, the unmistakable crunch of gravel underfoot. My heart jumped into my throat as I peered through the slats of the barn. At first, I didn't see anything, but then a figure stepped out from the tree line. They were tall, dressed in dark clothing, and moved with an unsettling confidence. Slowly, they approached the livestock pen, as though they had done this many times before. Then I saw something else, another figure standing at the edge of the woods. They didn't move, didn't make a sound. They just stood there, watching. I tightened my grip on the shotgun, my pulse pounding in my ears. I fired 2 warning shots into the air, the sound ripping through the stillness of the night. The figure near the pen froze for a moment before turning and running back toward the trees. I thought that would be the end of it. But then, a loud crack echoed through the air. A bullet slammed into the barn door, splinters flying in all directions. I ducked behind a stack of hay, barely registering the second shot that followed. Whoever they weren't just trespassing. They were armed, and they weren't afraid to fight back. When the police finally arrived, it felt like a lifetime had passed. Their flashlights swept over the property, highlighting the footprints that led back into the woods. They found several shell casings near the pen, but no sign of the intruders. Their theory? Poachers. Maybe they were after the livestock, or maybe they were using the ranch as a hideout. But I couldn't shake the feeling that something more was going on. Why stalk the property for days? Why walk the same path, circling the pen and stopping at my porch? And why shoot back after being discovered? None of it made sense. The officers assured me it was nothing to worry about, but their words didn't bring much comfort. After that night, I made some changes. Floodlights now cover the entire property, and security cameras are installed on every corner of the house and barn. But even with all those precautions, the sense of safety is gone. The ranch doesn't feel like home anymore. Every time I step outside, I can't help but glance toward the woods, half expecting to see those figures standing at the tree line watching. Maybe it's just paranoia, or maybe they're still out there waiting for their chance to come back. If you thought the first story was unsettling, the next one will make you question just how safe rural life truly is. Imagine discovering that someone had been watching your home, planning something far more disturbing. By the way, if you're still watching and haven't subscribed yet, now's the time. We share stories like these every week. And trust me, you don't want to miss what's coming next. Life on the farm had its own rhythm. Early mornings spent walking the rows of corn, the sun just peeking over the horizon, and Max, my loyal dog, always by my side. Max wasn't just a companion. He was a guard, a protector, always alert to the sounds and movements around us. Together, we had carved out a simple, quiet life. But one Tuesday morning, things didn't feel right. As I was heading toward the cornfield, Max froze in his tracks. His ears pricked up, and he began barking furiously at something near the edge of the field. I followed his gaze and saw what looked like a small, makeshift campsite tucked away at the field's edge. It wasn't much, just a circle of stones, a crumpled blanket, and the remains of what had been a fire. The fire pit was cold, but not too old. Someone had been there recently. My unease deepened as I noticed the footprints leading away from the campsite. They were human, barely a day old, and they led directly toward my house. When I reached my back porch, my stomach dropped. There were scratches on the doorframe, long and jagged, as though someone had tried to force their way inside. I didn't want to jump to conclusions, but the evidence was hard to ignore. Someone had been watching, someone had been close. That night, I decided Max wasn't staying outside. He slept at the foot of my bed, his quiet growls a constant reminder that we weren't alone. For the next few days, the farm fell off. I couldn't shake the feeling that someone was out there, hiding just beyond the fields. I started locking all the doors and windows, something I'd never done before. And then, late one night, Max's barking jolted me awake. I grabbed my flashlight and ran outside, barely able to make out Max's silhouette as he bolted into the cornfield. His barks turned into growls, low and guttural, as he disappeared into the tall stalks. The flashlight beam swept across the field, but all I could see were rows of corn swaying slightly in the breeze. Then I saw it, a figure moving through the stalks. They were fast, weaving between the rows like they knew the layout better than I did. I shouted, demanding they show themselves, but they only moved faster, disappearing deeper into the field. Max came back moments later, blood smeared across his muzzle. My heart sank, thinking he'd been hurt, but he was fine. Whatever, or whoever he'd chased hadn't been so lucky. When the police arrived, they scoured the edge of the field and found something chilling. A knife and a length of rope left discarded near the campsite. The officer turned to me and said something I'll never forget. Looks like someone had plans. After that night, everything changed. I installed motion-activated lights around the house and put up security cameras at every angle. But no amount of technology could erase the unease that had settled over the farm. The cornfield, which had always felt like a safe haven, now seemed sinister. I couldn't walk the rows without imagining someone lurking just out of sight. Every rustle of the stalks sent a shiver down my spine. Every bark from Max set my heart racing. The police never found the person responsible. No arrests, no follow-ups. It was as though they'd vanished into thin air, leaving only the knife, the rope, and the fear they'd planted in me. Even now, years later, the farm doesn't feel the same. The isolation that once brought me comfort now feels like a threat. Every time I step outside, I can't help but look toward the edge of the field, half expecting to see someone standing there waiting. If you thought the last story was unsettling, brace yourself for what's next. This final tale takes us to a quiet farmhouse that became the focus of relentless, uninvited visitors. What happened there will leave you questioning how safe any home can truly be. And if you haven't already, make sure to subscribe. You won't want to miss what's coming next. When my friend Paul asked me to house sit his farmhouse for a week, I thought it would be a much-needed escape. The property was beautiful, rolling pastures, horses grazing in the fields, and the kind of quiet that you can only find in the countryside. Paul assured me it would be an easy week. Just feed the horses, keep an eye on the house, and enjoy the peace and quiet. At first, it was exactly that. The first night passed without incident. But by the second morning, I noticed something strange. The front gate, which I distinctly remembered closing the evening before, was wide open. I figured it was just the wind, or maybe I hadn't latched it properly. Then I walked to the barn to feed the horses and found hay scattered across the floor, as if someone had been digging through it. I told myself it was nothing, just an animal looking for food. But deep down I felt a faint unease. By the third night, the unease had turned into something I couldn't ignore. I was sitting in the living room reading when I heard it, footsteps. Slow, deliberate, and coming from upstairs. My heart froze. I put the book down and strained to listen, but the footsteps had stopped. I told myself it was an old house settling, but I wasn't convinced. Grabbing a flashlight, I made my way upstairs. The hallway was empty, but one closet door was slightly ajar. I hesitated, my hand hovering over the knob, before pulling it open. Nothing, just empty shelves. Still, the feeling that something or someone was there refused to leave me. Things escalated quickly after that. On the fifth night, I was startled awake by a loud thud outside my bedroom window. Groggy but alert, I grabbed my flashlight and peered outside. My stomach sank. A ladder was propped up against the window, its rungs glinting faintly in the moonlight. Someone had been outside my room, watching me. I rushed outside, but whoever it was had already gone. What chilled me to the bone, though, was the smudge on the glass, a handprint, faint but unmistakable. Someone had pressed their hand against the window, close enough to see inside. That same night, just as I was locking all the doors and windows, I heard it, the front door creaking open. My breath caught as I froze, listening. Then came the sound of heavy boots on the wooden floorboards. They were inside. I did the only thing I could think of. I hid in the pantry, clutching my phone and trying to stay silent. Through the thin door, I could hear them moving through the house, their voices low and muffled. They weren't in a hurry. They were searching room by room, their footsteps deliberate and unhurried. I held my breath, praying they wouldn't find me. After what felt like an eternity, the sound of sirens pierced the silence. Flashing red and blue lights filled the windows, and the intruders bolted. By the time the police arrived, the house was empty, but the damage had been done. Doors were left open, furniture had been moved, and muddy footprints were tracked all over the floor. Paul came back the next day, and I told him everything. I refused to stay another night in that house. What started as a peaceful escape had turned into a week of terror. The police never caught the intruders. They said it was likely a group of thieves looking for valuables. But that explanation never sat right with me. Why prop a ladder against my window? Why press their hand against the glass? And why take their time searching the house when they knew someone was inside? Even now, I can't drive past a rural farmhouse without feeling a chill. The isolation, which once seemed so calming, now feels suffocating. Every creak of a floorboard, every shadow cast by the moon, it all brings me back to that night. Paul still lives in that house, but I'll never set foot there again. Rural life isn't always the escape we imagine. Sometimes, the silence hides things far more terrifying than we're ready to face. These tales remind us that even in the quietest corners of the world, danger can find its way in. The tranquility of rural life can hide the kind of fear that keeps you awake at night, questioning every shadow and every sound. Which story gave you the most chills? Have you ever experienced anything like this? Share your thoughts in the comments below. We'd love to hear your take. If these stories kept you on the edge of your seat, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to Eerie Road Tales. We bring you spine-chilling true stories, and there's plenty more where this came from. Thanks for watching, and stay safe.